Hello and welcome to Fantasy Filmball, the show where we make a game out of the classic and contemporary films worth watching. Thank you so much for joining us on our second episode today, and I am joined with...
Me, Jamie Rogers, expert on all things Jake Gyllenhaal and Carly Simon.
And I'm Tay Elvis, expert on Jake Gyllenhaal post-2009.
I'm Matt Downs, and I don't know who Jake Gyllenhaal is.
And I'm Kevin Dillon's one and only stalker, John McGee.
And I'm Arno Weissenberger. I don't know. I have nothing prepared. So that's the end of the episode, guys. So
Lots of things have happened since last episode.
That's right. Actually, now that I think of it, lots of things have happened since last episode.
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it as well, lots of things have happened since last episode.
You know, I'm going to jump on this train and say a lot has happened since the last episode.
I'll have to go and disagree because I have no idea what you guys are talking about. You'll have to enlighten me.
So you guys might have heard this on the news. I mean, this was pretty big. Did you guys hear that racism is gone? It's over. It's eradicated.
Round of applause.
I mean, we finally did it.
We got rid of racism.
It's done.
So this is probably due to the Oscars. The Oscars have happened, and this has been a little while now. It's been a couple days, and you'll be listening to this probably a little bit over a week from the time the Oscars have happened. So we have a little bit of time to reflect on this, a little bit of time to be more objective on the results. So we'll be talking about the ceremony and see if anything good came out of it.
Well, I don't know if it's just because the volume on the TV wasn't that loud and everybody in the room was being very talkative, but I was very bored by the events of the ceremony. Not a lot happened. I appreciate the focus on awards rather than gimmicks, but I did not care about what was happening.
See, I'd counter that and say that I actually enjoyed the show much more than I usually do. But I think that's coming from me. Like, I always watch the Oscars and I just want to see the awards. And I've always really hated when it cuts away to a commercial break and it's like a 5-minute commercial break and we come back and Ellen DeGeneres is like, hey, selfie time. And then she takes a selfie and then we cut back to commercials and I'm like, just please show me the awards. I've got my awards pool. I just want to know what won best sound editing. So please tell me. So for me, I found that I actually really enjoyed the flow of the ceremony because, you know, I'm just in it to see who wins.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it moved a lot faster. It was more enjoyable to watch, in my opinion. We weren't eating bao, but
Yeah.
I was.
John was eating bao. No, I thought it was. I think like the focus on the awards was a lot better. Like thank God they didn't get rid of cinematography and the editing, all those.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing is that they really shortened the ceremony down. I mean, it still wasn't under 3 hours like they said that they would do it, but I think it was between like 3:15 and 3:30, something like that.
It was pretty good.
It was a decent length. It still probably could have been shortened a little bit, but the only like complaint I have would be that it lacked a little bit of personality. Is that, and I don't think that's necessarily because there isn't a host. I think that's because the show directors didn't really give the whole ceremony a theme.
Yeah,
it was just a bunch of presenters doing their thing.
It's going to be a forgettable episode for a number of reasons, in my opinion.
Now, do you think that this might be because the people who were in charge of the Oscars were so fed up with every decision that they made backfiring on them? Do you think that maybe they just didn't want to do anything besides the bare minimum because it seems like whenever they tried to, they got yelled at?
Yeah, I definitely think that is a big reason, and that's to me that's why the show was boring. Not like just because it was focusing on the awards. I appreciate that, but just the fact that it lacked any sort of creativity in any way. Like it didn't try to keep your attention at all. There was no personality to it. It's a good way to put it. There was nothing fun. I wasn't having fun watching that.
The positive thing is that without a host, you have significantly less time. So it's less boring in the long run. As it finishes earlier, we get to the point. We have less just moments of skits that lead to nothing, that aren't fulfilling in any way. Last year, there was like Jimmy Kimmel bringing his younger self or something.
Yeah, or Helen Mirren winning like a jet ski or giving away a jet ski.
No. Helen Mirren was being auctioned off.
She was being auctioned off with a jet ski? Yeah,
that's right.
No, it was that was whack.
Well, I think part of it too is like they think it's safer because they get less criticism for like dumb Oscar skits, which is also a good thing for them. Well, at least that's what they think. I mean, I kind of liked it without a host for that reason, that no one just gets mad like, oh, why is Jimmy Kimmel on my screen right now yelling about A Wrinkle in Time and running into a movie theater full of people and surprising them like that. Those things are like not done anymore now.
I think it also really allowed for the presenters to give themselves a little bit more personality. For example, like starting the show off with Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, and Maya Rudolph, I think was a great decision because they got to come in and do like a little bit of the host monologue slot.
Love them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
who
they were
doesn't?
the the highlight of any of the aside from the awards being given out, it was the highlight. Of
I
the
mean,
night.
despite Jimmy Kimmel being the host last year, Maya Rudolph and Tiffany Haddish were the highlight of that ceremony.
Absolutely.
Totally.
Yeah, so it really, without the host, gave more opportunity for the presenters to have more personality with it.
Yeah, so essentially, I think we agree that the presenters themselves can give personality to the show. And I think there was a lot of great presenter combos, unlike the year before. Melissa McCarthy and Brian Tyrese Henry were terrific.
Brilliant.
There was Jason Momoa and Helen Mirren, which also worked for me.
Cute.
Was cute. There was still some that didn't really work, but they seem to be better than usual. And I feel like if there's a good show director that has a theme going through, which is basically what the host is there for, to have a bit of a personality, to have a theme running through the ceremony, and yet without having a host and having these great presenters, I think it's completely feasible and possible to make this show completely entertaining, full of laughter, without needing for there to be a host, because all the host does at this point is just give more time. It's adding 30, 45 more minutes for no reason. And now that I think of it, that's probably the right way to go.
Yeah, and I do think this was a step in the right direction, but just because of everything that happened, they were playing it very, very safe, and it kind of next year I think they'll be able to like really come into their own in this sort of no host if they go for it. Maybe now they'll just like get a host again now that it's like kind of safer, everything has died down, but I hope they keep going in this direction because I think it could be something a lot more entertaining and way less time consuming.
I feel like they're going to try to get a host again, but I think that they now know that it's a safe fallback if people say no, because the Oscar host position has been referred to as the least wanted job in Hollywood. No one wants to do it. And
Except for Kevin Hart.
Well,
And Ellen DeGeneres, apparently.
well, Ellen DeGeneres has said that she never wants to do it again.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So really, like, I think that they're going to have a very hard time finding someone, but it's good that now they really know that this is an option and that it's not going to crash their ratings. Because clearly, a lot more people actually ended up watching this year. What's the stats on that, Arno?
I think it's up 6%. I haven't looked at the exact stats. Maybe we should quickly look that up. But what I do know as far as stats is that I did look at the Rotten Tomatoes score of the Oscar ceremony, because there is a Rotten Tomatoes score for Oscar ceremony, in case you guys didn't know. And I noticed that the score for this year's ceremony was somewhere in the 70s, as opposed to last year's ceremony, which was in the 40s.
Rotten Tomatoes score for as of right now is 69%.
Oh, never. Well,
Also nice. By the way.
Yeah.
Nice.
never mind. Just under 70, which is perfectly fine.
Which
in this
compared to last year's, which was 43%. Now that's a rotten award ceremony, if you know what I'm talking about.
Now, since we're looking at how the ratings are up on viewers, do we think that this is because of the controversy, or do we think it's because they nominated like Black Panther, Bohemian Rhapsody, A Star Is Born?
I think it's a bit of both. I think it's a bit of everything. The Oscars have been in the spotlight for a while this year. It's with all the controversy, and I do think that them nominating things like Green Book, Bohemian Rhapsody, and Black Panther that were very popular movies, I do think just sort of the combination of those really helped. And that's the end of my sentence.
I think that those things definitely could not have heard it. Absolutely. However, I do think that the Oscars have been getting a lot of negative press, but they've been getting a lot of press regardless. And
No
so I
such
think a lot
thing
of
as bad
people-
publicity, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think people were just curious to see if this was going to be a disaster, and to see what it was going to turn out like, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It's just people wanted to see it for good, for better or for worse.
Any highlights of the ceremony, some moments that really struck out to you guys?
Well, the obvious one for that is the performance of Shallow by Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper, which was really, really a high point of the show.
It felt like they were getting actually trying to make an effort to be different in how they film their concert scenes, because they filmed it like they do in the movie, which was actually kind of cool to see.
They got up on stage. They filmed with the audience as the backdrop. It's really a really
all done in
cool
one take too,
performance there.
Yeah, it was a beautiful one take and something you don't normally see. Like all the other songs were just kind of filmed very traditionally, and having the camera just start from behind, having Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga come from the seats they're sitting in onto the stage, that was a great moment. And I did not know that they were going to be the ones performing it, and I didn't realize they were still sitting in their seats. So when that happened, I was just like, damn.
Even just the piano game pushed on stage, I was like, oh my god, what's about to happen? And then it's shallow.
No, it's all the stars.
Yeah.
There was such a chemistry between the two of them in that performance that I think was really outstanding and showed
I
why.
think Gaga just wanted to kiss him.
A little bit too much chemistry, if you know what I mean.
But I feel like that performance kind of embodied why I think those two performances were really, really good, especially Bradley Cooper, who was personally one of my favorite performances of the year.
He could have easily won. Now I don't think people would have been upset.
Yeah, and that performance embodied that. He really got into that moment, and looking at him, his eyes looking towards Gaga were just, the chemistry there was so strong. And yeah, not only was it a great performance, it really showed why I think Bradley Cooper should have won his award.
For sure.
I'm sure his significant other also thinks exactly what you're thinking.
Did you guys hear that Lady Gaga called off her engagement right before the ceremony?
Yes. Oh.
This whole rumor has been dispelled, though, by Lady Gaga, who said it's all just for show.
If you think a rumor is no longer viable if someone involved in the rumor says it's not true, you have never been to high school.
When you say dispelled, is the engagement still on?
I'm sorry, I didn't know this was a gossip podcast.
Hey guys, we're talking about all the hottest Hollywood couples here.
Oh my god, did you see Bradley Cooper's wife in between the two?
It looks like things are heating. What?
All right, next thing. Let's talk about dresses.
She was sitting in between the two.
Can we talk about Spike Lee calling out Green Book?
Yeah, let's talk about Spike Lee calling out Green Book, because that's one of my favorite parts of the whole thing.
I can't say it's my favorite thing, because, here, I'll explain why I think that, Green Book winning, I don't think it should have won. I don't think it deserved it over other movies, obviously. But I think there's a silver lining to the entire thing, which is that anyone who needs to see a movie about racism and needs it painted out very simply for them is probably ignorant or racist or can't understand something of a higher form. I don't know. But so if you're putting Green Book on a national stage now, where a lot more people are gonna hear about it, then maybe it's a good thing that it did win, just so that people who are racist can maybe hopefully learn a lesson.
But at the same time, I'll speak to that a little bit more in depth later. But I think that the message that it's teaching, the film itself isn't damaging, but I think that the lesson learned from Green Book is a little bit damaging, because it basically, at the end, says, look how people change, look how times have changed, it's so different now, and things get better. And I think that it is a little bit damaging at the end of Green Book to be able to walk away and say, wow, isn't it so good that things aren't that way anymore?
It's going to be one of the most forgotten Oscar Best Pictures in recent history.
Before we get too far into it, I just want to let our viewers know that we are indeed talking about the thoughts on the winners of the Oscar. And we have recorded ourselves reacting to the Oscars, and we won't let you listen to everything, but we do want to make you listen to our biggest, most theatrical reactions, which is our biggest happy surprise and our biggest, I guess, unhappy
Dear God,
surprise.
no, don't let this happen surprise.
Yeah, exactly. We'll play out the surprises right here. They happen not too far off of each other.
And the Oscar goes to Olivia Colman.
That feels good. That feels really good to me.
Excited. She's crying so much.
And the Oscar goes to Green Book.
Wow! No!
God.
Oh my God! No! Oh!
For the record, me and John were not there.
No, that was me. A mixture of me, Matt, and Arno.
Yeah.
And Arno weeping apparently.
Yeah.
I was crying in the background. Matt was saying no in the foreground, and
Yeah.
Tay was just, you could probably recognize Tay.
Tay was standing at the window shouting outside.
So
I think you were taking in the whole thing, and then at the very end, when it was quiet, you felt the need to let it all out, right?
I just didn't think we had expressed our anguish enough, and I needed to, elevate that a little bit.
So I think you can tell from that we're really happy about Green Book winning.
Before we rant about the results too much, I do want to say that Green Book winning Best Picture is good for TIFF, and we are from Toronto. And TIFF, of course, every year at the festival, they give out the People's Choice Award. And this People's Choice Award has a reputation of getting some significant success at the Oscars. It doesn't necessarily win Best Picture, but it certainly almost always gets nominated. Last year, Three Billboards was probably the second one to win. The year before that, La La Land won for 2.5 minutes. So, that's something.
Slumdog Millionaire won the People's Choice Award back
Yeah.
in the day. And it won Best
Chariots of
Picture.
Fire won. The King's Speech won.
Classic.
So, however, we haven't gotten a winner of this award since 12 Years a Slave, and that was back in 2013. So it's been a little while since this award has really had its reputation been proven. So this is good for TIFF
Feels good.
in that sense. Now let's go on to the to the rant.
I do want to stop you right there for
Oh.
a second, Arno, and I just want to ask: do you think that Green Book would have been nominated, like much less win, but do you think it would have been nominated had it not won the People's Choice Award?
First of all, the film got great critical reviews. It's a film that connected with audiences, and it's Oscar bait. So I do think it would have gotten nominated for Best Picture. That being said, the People's Choice Award, because it garnered this reputation, I think incites the studio with the film to financially support the film in an Oscar campaign. So basically, I think that if they didn't win that prize, they wouldn't have gotten as much of a financial backing to make this Oscar campaign as they would have had otherwise, because it's not a film that you initially, even though on the surface the plot is Oscar bait, it's not a film that you would initially think of as the Oscar Best Picture winner. So I don't know if it would have won or not, but it certainly wouldn't have gotten as much financial backing for a campaign. I do think that it probably would have gotten Best Picture nomination. But again, I don't want to do all these. I don't want to. What's the word? I don't want to.
Hypotheticals.
I don't want to do these hypothetical thoughts. Yeah.
No, I do think that's interesting, though, because if we look back a few years, the film Room with Brie Larson won the Toronto International Film Festival People's Choice Award. And that was a movie that, was on no one's horizon, pretty much. It was based on a best-selling book, great book by Emma Donoghue. But that movie really was... No one thought that was going to go the distance, and then it ended up with a Best Picture nomination and a Best Actress win, and I think that you could bring that right down to TIFF.
Absolutely. I think without that movie winning that award, it wouldn't have gone anywhere. Brie Larson would not have gotten an Oscar for that role.
So yeah, it's fascinating to think about the impact of Toronto on this ceremony.
Absolutely. So thank you, the citizens of Toronto, for making Green Book our Best Picture winner. I think the root of my anger for this is not that Green Book is a terrible film, because I think it's a good film. I rated it a positive rating. I think most of us did.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, well, I think all of us did, other than Jamie, who hasn't seen
Yeah.
it. The root of my anger is that it won against the favorite film, which was Roma. That film...
Wait, let's reword that.
Sorry, let me reword that. It won against the biggest contender? The biggest contender, which was Roma, and that
And
film
the favorite,
was...
which was the favorite.
Thank you, Matt. That makes my point so much more clear.
Roma also was Roma, in case
Can I
anyone was
finish?
confused.
is Roma.
Can I please finish my point?
What about Black Panther?
It won against the favorite Black Panther. No, it won against the...
No.
It won against the biggest contender for that prize, which was Roma. That film was a foreign language film. It was a film distributed and financed by Netflix. And if that were to win, it would be game-changing for the industry. No Best Picture winner has ever been a foreign language feature. No Best Picture winner has ever been from a streaming service. That would have opened up possibilities. That would have opened up... directors from other countries would be like, I can maybe win an Oscar.
Yeah. it would have set a precedent, and that would have mean that if it had won, the Oscars might have, continued to head in a direction of really bold and risky choices and things that, stand outside of the mainstream.
And also, when is that going to happen again?
Absolutely.
It would have
Never.
happened again next year had Roma won. We would have had foreign language films in there next year, but I think that now that this Roma losing kind of makes it show that even if you pour $26 million into your campaign,
It's one step backwards instead of 2 steps forward.
This is why Pan's Labyrinth should have won Best Picture at the 2008 Academy Awards.
2008?
Well, the movie came out in 2007, did it not?
Isn't
Or was
2005?
2006, I think.
2000.
We are all saying different years, so everyone is right.
It came out in 2006, and it was at the 2007 Academy Awards. Let me
okay.
fact check this.
I'd
No,
like
yeah,
to point
it's
out that Matt
2006.
went into
Yeah, so-
incognito mode to search this up. I just
No,
think
I
that's
had
2006.
incognito
So it was
open.
the 2007 Oscars.
Okay.
I stand
2006,
corrected. Still,
I stand with you.
I stand Pan's Labyrinth.
I stand an Ollie.
We'll get to that
later.
Yeah, but essentially, other than Green Book winning that award, there were a lot of disappointments. Personally, I feel like it was probably, as far as results go, maybe the most disappointing Oscars I've viewed since I started viewing them in 2010. Because the thing about the nominations, as we discussed last episode, is that there were a lot of really terrible nominations mixed in with some great nominations. So my assumption was that, okay, this isn't great as far as nominations go, but at least they'll go for the good half of those nominations. But it turned out they went the complete opposite route, generally speaking.
Yeah, and I think that the terrible results were kind of reflected in the nominees, like you said. We all knew that shit was going to go down when Bohemian Rhapsody got 5 nominations. And yeah, there was just a lot of really disappointing things in there.
Oh, also, I'm sorry, I've completely forgot to mention this while we were talking about Green Book. Green Book is the second Best Picture winner since Crash to get a 69 on Metacritic.
Can we get a nice?
Nice.
I guess we're all clapping.
I think one interesting thing that we can talk about as well is that every single movie that was nominated for Best Picture won at least one award at the ceremony, which hasn't happened since 2014. But everything that was nominated for Best Picture won at least something.
Which is great because we thought the favorite was going to come out empty-handed until Olivia Colman won.
Yeah, it was looking bad there.
Since we're talking about, winners that were disappointing, I think it should be said that Olivia Colman was a surprise, and she was the best surprise that could have happened for the whole night.
I agree. She is delightful, and she is in Hot Fuzz, and it's the most hilarious performance of all time.
She also gave maybe the best Oscar speech that has ever been given.
Yeah, it was pretty great. It was like in a matter of a few minutes, she became Hollywood's star in every sense. And
Do we
really-
consider it an Oscar speech? I mean, it's certainly words.
Yeah, she said words. She said words in an order that I don't think she had planned.
For me, she energized the whole show. I was really, my attention span was waning, and then she came in and was just re-energized the whole
She
thing
just
for
went,
me.
Oh, Lady Gaga.
Should she host the Oscars?
Yes.
You can see that she didn't have her speech planned, which I think is reflected in the fact that Glenn Close was, way ahead in the odds. And I think that the only other person who prepared a speech was probably Lady Gaga because she,
Uses the same speech for everything.
yes, exactly. There could have been 100 people in that room and she still would have used the same speech.
Yeah, what do we think of Bohemian Rhapsody, one of the best films of the year,
I haven't seen it.
winning 4 out of the 5 Oscars it was nominated for, and the 5th Oscar would have been Best Picture?
It's so disappointing.
I mean, Rami Malek, a lot of people love his performance, and that's understandable. I'm not in that camp personally, but that's understandable. He is giving a performance that's very, that's something that people like to give awards to. That's fine.
And he's into it. Like you can tell he's into
committed.
it, and that's nice. That's nice to
the
see.
Best actor win, that's the one that doesn't bother me. It's the sound editing and sound mixing ones that really
Have you
bother me.
guys seen these videos of the editing of Bohemian Rhapsody? And every time there's a cut, there's like the sound of
Yeah.
A
clapping.
whip cracking.
Exactly, that video is hilarious. It shows exactly why I think this is actually perhaps the worst edited film of the year that I've
Yeah.
seen.
Oh, absolutely. It's really poorly edited. And to go back to Rami Malek, I just think that it's really funny that in his clip that they showed for Best Actor, that he was lip syncing
I thought that was incredibly
and
ironic.
not doing anything other than just moving his mouth and pretending to play the piano.
Yeah.
That was a bad clip to show.
Yeah, you can say that he was acting while doing that, but the emotion in that scene was coming from Freddie Mercury's vocals.
It was like the opposite of playing an animated character, and that's the clip they went with.
Yeah, Rami Malek was the animated character in Freddie Mercury's voice.
Generally speaking, the
favorite
clips
voice
that they
actor.
showed, the Oscar acting clips, were pretty terrible. I mean, I know that the
they're
three
weird.
clips,
Yes.
the three clips they showed for all the actresses of The Favorite were all clips that were available either from the trailer or on YouTube. They didn't look into the film or anything and look for the best performances of these individual actors.
Yeah.
They just took 3 random YouTube clips.
Matt pointed out that Christian Bale's clip from Vice was like super out of context with the movie, which is like it was like
Sorry,
for some
can you-
reason it was
what
like
was
the
clip again?
It was like I don't know. There was
It was
some
at
part
the
where
end,
it was
the
like,
end of the film.
yeah, it was
where
like
he-
zooming in on him like very slowly, and he's like having this dramatic like speech. It's not what the movie's like at all. But for some reason it gets that clip, and it probably was the best clip for the night for actors or actresses.
And when Emma Stone's clip played, I like the clip because it's hilarious, but it does not show like her acting like range in the movie. And her reaction to seeing the clip was hilarious because she was like, why did they show that?
The closest thing they got to a good clip was probably Melissa McCarthy, which is like the ultimate scene of the film where she's basically confessing but not confessing. It's the scene in the film where she shows a lot of emotion, where it's just her, it's nobody else, it's just her speaking. So that's the closest they got to that. Everything else was just
Well,
like
I really like that one, and the Rachel Wise one I thought where she like shoots the musket towards.
That
Emma
was
Stone.
good,
That was
yeah.
a good one too. I agree that the Melissa McCarthy one was good too, though.
Yeah.
Bohemian Rhapsody getting both sound awards is something that a lot of us predicted it, but again, it's just so sad.
It's just disappointing because it shows that the voters just looked at it and said, "Sound? You know what I like the sound of in my ear holes? Queen."
Exactly what I was.
Yeah,
gonna
it
say,
really
yeah.
shows that they really have no idea what sound mixing or sound editing entails. And, well, I don't really either, but I'm not voting for the biggest award in Hollywood.
Well, I can see why they would have given it sound mixing.
Yeah.
I can understand that.
I
wouldn't agree.
can't.
No, well-
When it's competing against A Star Is Born, I'm sorry, but you're dumb.
Yeah.
But at the same
You,
time,
Matt, you're dumb.
I am dumb, but at the same time, like the reason why I can see it winning is because they had to do a lot of work with. They had to mix together all of these old clips of Freddie Mercury with. I believe that they had another singer imitating Freddie Mercury, who was surprise, not Rami Malek.
It was Barbara
but-
Streisand.
Yeah, and I was gonna like get to is like with sound editing. That's like the creation of sound, whereas mixing is putting it together. So for a movie where their sound is all old recordings and not stuff they had to make themselves, mixing makes sense to me, but not editing.
I'm shocked that Bohemian Rhapsody was even nominated for sound editing because, yeah, when it comes to you're collecting new sounds, you're editing them together, you're finding that flow. I just don't get how it was nominated, much less won.
Basically, the fact that it won for both sound awards really shows that the Academy doesn't care about the distinction between these two aspects of sound, and they just think sound, that's the same thing, I'll vote for the same film twice, even though there's clearly a distinction and they can think of them differently. Like, we all have our different opinions. If I were to vote, I would give First Man the sound editing and Roma the sound mixing, because the sounds that were created in Foley and that were laid out on the track for First Man were terrific. But the mixing for Roma in Dolby Atmos was something that I had never heard before.
Mm-hmm. And four of the 5 sound mixing and sound editing nominees are the exact same movies. So that just goes to show that most of the Academy members don't know what they're nominating for. They don't know the difference between the two, so they just nominate the same thing.
Well, yeah, I think part of it, like Black Panther, is just like I don't know. I don't want to say pity nomination, but I think people just looked at it and went, "Oh, remember that movie? Like it had good music and sound. Do you remember that? That was great. Let's give it to them."
Well, speaking of that music,
Yeah, yeah. Let's segue from there to the music, which I definitely want to talk a bit about because I feel like I am a huge fan of If Beale Street Could Talk's music. What's up, Jamie? Jamie has his hand up.
that's a Jamie thing, I suppose.
My biggest thing about Best Score is that First Man was not nominated, and that's ridiculous because I don't even love First Man as a movie that much. It's good. I like it a lot, but the score is hands down one of the best of the year, and I think it should have been the winner of Best Original Score, if not just a nominee. It's ridiculous that it wasn't there.
Yeah, there were a lot of crimes with that category. And I think, personally, I think that If Beale Street Could Talk is much better than First Man's score. I do love First Man's score. It is a huge shame that First Man was not nominated, which I just think shows how much the Academy did not like First Man, which is shocking.
Bunch of losers.
The best score category this year, and perhaps also the best editing category, reminds me of the best animated feature category of 2014, in which basically the frontrunner for that category
Obscure
was the
reference there.
Very obscure.
maybe, but let me explain myself. Basically, that year, the Lego Movie was easily the best animated film of that year,
And
or
of
at
all
least the
time.
general consensus was it was a frontrunner, didn't get nominated. Okay, that's strange, but at least within the nominations, the best film, not in my opinion, but the best film would probably have been considered How to Train Your Dragon 2, right? They give it to Big Hero 6.
Because of that Disney, baby.
That's right, and it was perhaps the worst film in that category. I don't know. While Black Panther is certainly not the worst score in that category, it's just such a shame that it won against Beale Street Could Talk, because that was one of the best scores I've heard of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. I think If Beale Street Could Talk, that score reminds me a lot of Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver, 1976, masterpiece, amazing. And that score of Beale Street, it's got these like trumpets which just hang over top of this string quartet, and it's just it is an amazing score. It's something that like I can't say that I listen to a lot of movie music just on a day-to-day basis. I listen to a lot of music, but I usually don't listen to a score outside of a movie. But I feel like I've been listening to the score for If Beale Street Could Talk for like the last few months on repeat. It's so beautiful and it's haunting. And for Black Panther, it's a good score, but I would never listen to that outside of the movie. For that to win is really shocking.
You guys want to hear my impression of Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver?
Absolutely.
Hey, I'm Robert De Niro. I'm driving
No,
a
That's
taxi.
Tony Lip. That's Tony Lip.
Oh,
You're
that's-
doing a Viggo Mortensen.
That's my bad. It's the same. Yeah, I love.
Hey, I'm gonna fold this pizza knife. Hey. Anyways.
Anyway, this is Impressions with Jamie and Tay.
All right, what do we think
Here, can you
about...
grab me Malik real quick? Can someone cue up Queen?
So we're all Canadians. What do we think of Canada losing the best live-action short?
I don't care.
Have you seen them?
No.
I
So-
don't care, but Bao won, so that's good.
That's true. At least
Wait, hold on. Bao. Yeah, Bao is Canadian. I care about that. Ha. I care about things.
Jamie pointed at Arno on the second ha.
I guess I'm the only one who cares about the live-action short because I'm from Quebec.
Oh, Quebec. My grandma's
Are you
from
trying
there.
to be Italian there?
Hey, I'm from the
So
Quebec.
why were you upset, Arno? Because I didn't see it, so I want to hear what you think.
Okay, so why am I upset? The frontrunner for that category is Marguerite. That was the film from Quebec. There is another nomination from Quebec that year. It's Fauve, and personally, that's one of the best short films I've seen in my life. I know not all of us agree here, but I think if we look at the score on Letterboxd and such, I think the general consensus is that it is a superbly crafted short. So between the one that was supposed to win and the one that should have won, turns out it's the American film that gets it, Skin. And Skin is a terrific short film, but it's just a little unfortunate that Canada didn't get it.
Well, there's been some debate whether or not it is good. Personally,
that's true.
I love the movie Skin. I think that short film has a lot to say. And I know that people have been calling this movie racist. People have been saying that it winning is racist. But I think that if you were to call that movie racist, you're kind of missing the point of it, which is that racism is not hereditary. It is taught to you. And I think that this movie is really powerful, mostly because it really touches on the fact that racism is not something that people are born with. You know, you're not born and think, you know, I hate people who don't look like me. That's not something that happens. Your parents teach you, and you are born innocent, and eventually you learn to hate. And I think that this movie touches on that in a really creative way, both on the side of, you know, skinheads as well as on the other side. And so, yeah, I do think that it's a great movie, and I think that it doesn't deserve people calling it racist. I don't think it deserves that.
Yeah, I think it's a great film, and I'm happy for it winning, but I'm just disappointed that in a year where two short films from Quebec, one of which I thought was absolutely incredible, perhaps even more effective than Skin, in my opinion, that Quebec doesn't get the Oscar, but I'm not going to complain too much. I realize that this has to do with my bias, and that's fine. Yeah.
One thing about Skin, I had a question. I was just looking at it the other day on Letterboxd and seeing a lot of negative reactions, like aggressively negative. But then I went to the director to see what else he'd made. He made a feature-length movie in 2018 called Skin, starring Jamie Bell.
Yeah.
Is it the same story?
No, they're very different stories. So the short film is this revenge story about a child and, that the child being indoctrinated into a racist mindset. The film is about a Nazi skinhead who has full body tattoos that are like neo-Nazi tattoos, and the story is about him getting counseling and going to get his tattoos removed.
So why, if you're this director, would you make a short film and a feature-length film in the same year and call them both Skin? And why do that? And why can't he do anything different?
It's very
I think they're
confusing,
companion pieces, because they're both about tattoos. Like the revenge plot of the short film is all about tattoos.
Yeah, and the skinhead that we start off with, the adult, does have a lot of tattoos with swastikas and that kind of stuff. Also, one thing to point out is that the feature film Skin has not yet come out. It's going to come out later this year. So the
Being
reason why it
released
says
by A24.
Oh, I did not know that. But it's based on a true story, and the reason why it says 2018 is because it premiered at TIFF, at the TIFF Film Festival.
Right.
So it's going to come out soon. So yeah.
I just think it's weird that this guy is
It's
so
a weird
focused
marketing
on this specific set of ideals.
I do think that it's going to push this movie a little bit, because they'll be marketing it as this is from the same director that made the short film that won the Oscar.
But do you not think it'll cause confusion for people who now know what Skin is, the short film? They'll think it's like an expansion of it. They'll think it's the same, like it's a remake of the short.
I do think that it will cause confusion, but I think that it is especially causing confusion right now because they have the same poster on Letterboxd.
I am certainly
they
confused.
changed it.
They did,
they changed
did
it.
change it.
That's
but
good.
it's very confusing to me, and I think it's kind of stupid.
Okay, another topic is that Netflix won 4 Oscars, and while it did not win Best Picture, that's a pretty good thing for Netflix. It won Best Documentary Short, and then the 3 Oscars that Roma won, which is Foreign Language Film, Cinematography. A Netflix film won for Cinematography, and Best Director.
Oh, I do want to talk about the cinematography thing, because have you guys heard the controversy?
Yes.
Yeah, that's...
with Alfonso maybe not being the
Yeah,
DP.
I think that's something we should talk about, because that's a really fascinating thing to me.
Yeah, it's very similar to what happened in the 80s with Poltergeist.
Yeah.
Toby Hooper is credited as the director of that movie, but really Steven Spielberg, who was acting as writer and producer, was on set every day, basically directing the actors, and he didn't take credit for it because his contract for the movie E.T. didn't allow him to direct the movie. So that is something very controversial that only just in the past few years people of a part of the crew have come out and said, yeah, this movie was directed by Steven Spielberg. So it's very interesting that we're already learning about this so soon, and I'm wondering when it'll be confirmed.
Well, it's been in the news for a while.
Tell us more about this controversy. I don't know about this.
Okay, so I'll explain it. Because just for anyone that doesn't know, so what has happened is that Alfonso Cuarón, great director, he directed Roma. He's just become the first director to win for cinematography for his own film that he's directed, which is a huge achievement. Huge achievement. He normally collaborates with Emmanuel Lubezki.
The director of photography on Cat in the Hat.
Yes, and The Revenant, 2 very similar films.
Yes.
But, so what had happened is that a few years ago it was reported that Alfonso Cuarón was working with a young DOP on this, just fresh out of film school, and the director of photography for Roma was going to be a man named Gallo Oliveras, or Gallo, I don't know how it's pronounced exactly, but...
It's probably Gallo.
Yeah, it's something. Oliveras, I'll just refer to him as Oliveras. But what had happened is that despite all these reports that Oliveras was shooting the movie, all of a sudden, Alfonso Cuarón was the one who was credited as the cinematographer. And so for a long time, it's been, he's been pushed for the win, but it's really come out recently that Oliveras was forced to sign a NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. There are call sheets of the set that show that Oliveras was credited as director of photography on set, and people who are on the set are now saying that Alfonso Cuarón worked more with the actors than he did with the camera, and that Galo Oliveras was the one behind the camera. In the credits of the movie, he is credited as collaborating cinematographer and camera operator. So there's no question that he was holding the camera, but there is a question as to why did Alfonso Cuarón take the cinematography credit if he wasn't, using the camera, if he wasn't doing all of that. And so there's been a lot of controversy with this, because no one really knows if Alfonso Cuarón just, paid Galo Oliveras to just say, I didn't shoot this, and just take some money under the table so that he can have the credit and so that he can win the Oscar for that, so he could be the first one. So it's a really interesting controversy right now, and I'm really looking forward to see how it unfolds.
Mm-hmm. I just hope it doesn't take 30 years like the Poltergeist thing.
Yeah. Well, that's been a rumor.
Yeah, because if I learned about that rumor in the 80s and it took until 2018 for me to actually learn what happened, I would be very irritated.
Yeah. But I think with this, it's really coming to an end about this. And I think that the way that I see it is that on the call sheets, which are the most damning piece of evidence against Cuarón, I think that what has happened is that they had to put him as director of photography on the call sheets, so that they were paying him those rates. But I think that he was just the camera operator, and that Cuarón was the one who was directing what to do and, setting the lights and doing all of that. So he was doing the work, I think, and Gallo was just operating the camera.
Right. And has he said anything about it? I guess
no, he has an NDA. So
right.
That's the thing, is he hasn't said anything because it's rumored that he signed a non-disclosure agreement and took money.
That would be too bad if he didn't get an Oscar for the work that was,
or even recognized in the speech.
I will say, he didn't get recognized in the speech, which is really
weird, because he is credited, like Matt said, as a contributor to the photography of the film.
I will say though that this controversy is really good for him, because I think that he's going to get a lot of work, whether or not this is true. I think that him just being on Roma and him having this controversy that, did he shoot Roma, is going to get him so much work.
but maybe not as much work as he would have gotten with the award.
yeah, if he won an Oscar for it.
I don't know. People know his name.
That's true.
Would people have known his name the same way had he been the one credited?
Well, the ones who are looking for it would know.
The ones who are
but
looking
now,
for it,
if it's in the press, then yeah, you're right that he's going to be getting a lot of attention now, which is good.
What do we think about First Man surprise VFX?
It's the best visual effects in the category, so it makes perfect sense. But for me, the visual effects, the whole argument, so many people are saying Infinity War was snubbed, which I think is ridiculous, because these movies
the dumbest thing.
that have heavy CGI, they're objectively good effects, but just because there's so much of it, it's oh, look, everything in the screen is animated. It's it doesn't make it good.
Yeah. If any of the nominees that are you have an overuse of VFX, it probably should have gone to Ready Player One. If any of those were gonna win.
Yeah, I will say that Avengers has we talked about this last week as well. I think Avengers has a lot of stuff in it that looks like pure shit.
Yeah,
that's been looked over because Thanos looks so good.
Because all these big budget comic book movies and just big blockbuster stuff like Ready Player One, there's so much visual effects, and they never have enough money for it, because it literally costs millions and millions of dollars to pay all these different effects houses to be putting all this work in, that they're stretching their budget and their workforce so thin that things aren't going to look as good. That's why the green screen on Titan in Avengers looks like pure shit. It just looks fake because they don't have time or money or resources to do all of it as well as Thanos.
So given all that, are we happy that First Man kind of surprisingly got that win?
Yes, because that is a movie that has very concise, focused computer-generated effects and also practical effects that you can't... It looks real. They're on the moon. Those guys went to the moon
landing.
They went to the moon for all I care. It looks so real, and it looks fantastic, and the way that they did it is so unique and so cool. It's way, way more impressive than just putting a big head on top of Josh Brolin.
So all of us, on top of our fantasy film ball game, we each do our Oscar predictions just before the ceremony. So, probably a lot of you, we print out a ballot and we check off on the boxes of the films that we think are going to win in each category. And so last year, I was victorious with 21 out of 24, which is a score I'm quite proud of.
That's insane.
The only ones
guy's out of control.
the only films I was not able to predict, I believe, was for Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay, which went to Shape of Water. Went to Get Out, and Best Picture went to Shape of Water, and I can't remember the third one. But anyways, John was close with 20. In any case, this year was significantly harder to predict, and while I did,
How has the mighty fallen this year, Arno?
That's what I'm getting to. So, while my score is significantly lower with 16 out of 24, I am still victorious.
Oh my God, this guy's out of control.
So I've
again.
redeemed my terrible fantasy Filmball picks, which we'll discuss
Have you,
just
though?
afterwards.
Also, for this Oscar prediction thing, I did not realize this had any sort of meaning or connotation towards the game. I thought I was just filling out a sheet for fun.
Is that why you did so bad?
Yes.
I heard you got 8.
Mine was I got
10.
You got first, man.
I did. My picks were a mix of random things because I didn't know the categories well at all. My preferred picks and things that I was pretty sure were going to win, like Green Book for Best Screenplay. But most of the things I was just guessing because I thought I was just trying to have fun with my friends. I didn't realize that it was a fight to the death.
I also like to point out that Jamie convinced me that Richard E. Grant was going to win.
Yeah, I want to point out that Arno and Matt convinced me Richard E. Grant.
I
was
didn't
gonna
convince you. No.
No,
I
I
did not
did.
convince
win.
you.
Yeah, Matt did.
Hold on.
I had the right
I thought-
answer.
I had
and he
Mahershala Ali.
convinced me. Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
Okay.
Me too.
I
I'm
didn't.
upset.
Hey,
You want to have our own podcast about
Yeah,
that?
we should have our own podcast.
I didn't care what John put for Best Supporting Actor. He asked me what I put. I said, I put Richard E. Grant because, why not? And that's me convincing
You said
him.
way more words than
I
that.
literally didn't, John. I didn't. You're
So,
just
did
mad
we-
that you followed my lead. I didn't ask you to.
My
Matt-
experience was different because Matt had insider information, basically is what he told me.
Matt tried to convince me to put Richard E. Grant, but I stuck with my guts.
See,
and
I didn't
Mahershala
try to
Ali.
convince John of anything. I just told him. He asked me.
Okay, we're moving on.
Okay, so
Never.
did we say that what we are using our Oscar predictions for is draft picks for next year? So our Oscar predictions position us in an order for our draft picks for our next fantasy film ball game. So whoever got the most correct gets to have first pick.
See, I didn't know this. I
So
didn't know that.
This also means that Jamie has last pick, which is very unfortunate.
But if you're playing Catan, it's the best thing to do. So
It's a
Well,
weird
The
reference.
Oscar prediction scores aren't for the very first round, though.
No, they are not.
They're
So
for second round
yeah,
picks.
so our first round of our draft comes down to the scores of our fantasy film ball game from this year, and then the second round goes to Oscar prediction scores.
I still don't know how this game works.
We don't either. It's the first year.
Just to recap, so I came in first with 16 out of 24. Tay came in second, just behind with 15 out of 24.
Tay's clapping very loud for himself.
After Billy got 13 out of 24, Matt and John are both tied with 12 out of 24.
I'm ashamed.
And one thing I do have to say is that
12.
is that John did predict both production design and costume. He predicted they would both go to Black Panther. So good job with that. And then Jamie, which correctly predicted visual effects.
That's right, baby.
Oh, and also I forgot to say that Tay correctly, I think it was the only one out of all of us that correctly predicted both score and actress. Good job with that.
Hell yeah.
You're the reason why Black Panther won score.
Hell yeah. I'm the reason that Ludwig Garrison made Redbone.
I'm
Is that the
sure
name?
that's not how
Yeah,
you
that's
say it.
not how you say
Ludwig Garrison? I'm pretty sure it's
No, it's not Garrison.
Gorhansen or something.
Gorhansen?
it. Ludwig, I thought.
Either way. No, it's Ludwig.
Ludwig?
Ludwig.
It's not
Ludwig.
Mario, but it's Ludwig.
Who cares? He works with Childish Gambino.
Yeah. Granson.
You mean Donald Glover. I think you mispronounced that.
Don Glove.
All right, and how do we do our first round of fantasy?
So just to recap what Fantasy Filmball is, it's the game that we created that is all about predicting ahead of time the films that will garner success at the Oscars. So here is the results in terms of points and positions of that game. This is our first game. So I have the pleasure of letting you know that the victor of the first game is Mr. Tay Alvis.
Woo!
He won with...
Yeah, so Tay came in first place with 3,636 points, which is insane. And that's a combination of him having The Favorite, which was the second most points in the whole game, as well as Vice, which had top 10 points, it was just a lot of good picks there. So congratulations.
I'd like to mention that John was right behind in terms of points, less than 50, I think, and would have won if we put a box office cap on The Incredibles 2, which was on Tay's team.
I think I was 31 points behind.
I'm not relevant to this part of the podcast, so I'm gonna go do some lunges.
You do that. Oh, he's actually doing lunges.
He's
over
doing
there.
lunges in jeans. He's not touching his knee to the ground, but
Yeah.
he's doing something.
It's not really. It doesn't count.
Anyways,
But while
so
we-
John came in second place.
Well, second place in terms of points. Second place as far as the game would be Matt, because Matt
Hell,
won.
Yeah.
Has Roma on his team, which is the film that garnered the most points total, just 10 points ahead of the favorite.
Yes. Thankfully, Roma did get 1,333 points,
Jesus.
which is really, really good. And if it won Best Picture, it would have been far and away the winner. So I was really close to, getting over 1,500 points there. That would have been nice. Roma would have deserved it. But yeah, I think normally in a typical year, this is our first year, but I think by the end of a normal season of this game, the winner of Best Picture should probably end up being the first place film. And in this year, Green Book, which did win Best Picture, was actually the third place film.
Which leads to the person who is in third place, which is Mr. Unpicked. That's right. The category of Unpicked, which had Green Book, is in third place because that is the film that won Best Picture.
Yeah, so to recap what Unpicked is, they're literally movies that none of us thought of. So in our draft, each of us picked 10 films. So since there are 5 of us in the game, that's 50 films. And of those 50 movies, no one picked Green Book because no one knew what it was until it won at TIFF. So yeah, that's really what happened there, and Green Book came in and destroyed us all because it ended up with 1,250 points at the very end of the game.
All right. So that was our Oscar recap. Let's hope that next year goes much better for the films that we love and for the ceremony and for the future of the award show.
Speaking of next year, though, I do want to start talking about some prospects because, we're coming up on that draft in a few months, and so I think that we can start talking about the films that we have an eye on that we think, might go all the way next year, the films that might end up taking some Oscars next year.
Detective Pikachu starring Ryan Reynolds.
Detective Pikachu, the trailer, but before we get into the real... I just want to say that I wouldn't be surprised if that film gets nominated for Best Production Design.
Or visual
Or
effects.
VFX.
Yeah, I think it has
Those
a good
Pokemons
shot.
are so
I mean,
cute.
all the
score
Pokemon
is gonna be
kinda
like,
look-
because you could do some cool shit with score.
You could, but all the Pokemon kind of look like they're on crack or need crack.
That said,
If
I
you
think
need
that
crack,
that's
you're
a
on
perfect
crack.
design element because when we think about Pokemon, they are supposed to be animals, and the animation doesn't really capture that in the TV show or the video games. So I think it's really cool that they kind of looked at what the biology of these characters would actually be. So I think that it has a chance at really doing something special with the design.
Man, if there's one thing off though, like if there's one little tidbit fact off about Pokemon, like if they're like Jigglypuff is blue eyes when it's supposed to have green eyes, I'm gonna notice it.
Yeah, John is a Pokemon nerd.
It's called
Big
Master.
Nerd.
Pokemon Master.
Pokemon
I think-
nerd? Is that what you're saying?
I think I'm
Aren't
I don't
we
know if
all-
I'm hearing you
Master?
from across the table here. Are you saying nerd?
ST.
Are you saying nerd?
ER Pokemon.
NERD is what I'm hearing. Nerd.
Did we all grow up on Pokemon?
I grew up on milk and cookies.
You're hilarious.
I grew
I
up
don't
with
know where I
Black
was going with that.
Friends.
Yeah, no, I grew up.
That's a little Chris Stuckman joke, if you don't know. That's not
That's
me.
not
being-
Matt being racist.
It's
That's
not-
a. It's
That's
a,
that's the
Welcome
thing
being
that
racist.
a
Did he say
YouTube
that?
reviewer said in his review of Get Out is he said, "I grew up with black friends, so I don't know what it's like to be racist."
Jesus.
Wow.
Very ironic.
and
that's-
it's still up.
That video is still up.
He has had time to think about it,
He's like,
and it's up.
What
That is Chris Stuckman. He's a YouTuber. Look at his video of Get Out in which he shows a photo of him as a child with black friends and says that he doesn't understand racism because
I'm going to see that immediately after this podcast.
we'll
Check
link
it in
it
the
in the
link in our
description.
bio.
It's too good to be true.
It's the worst. I love it.
It's
Wow.
But yeah, to carry on with prospects, to just go back to the Oscars, there's one thing that happened during the Oscars, which I'm going to throw it back to Rami Malek's clip, which shows him not singing the music of Queen, which I think is really interesting because during the Oscars, so Elton John, who has a film being made about him this year called Rocket Man, I'm sure you've seen the trailer, we're going to link it in the bio, but Rocket Man is about Elton John, and Elton John is probably the biggest Oscars nerd in the world. He throws a giant party every year, an Oscar viewing party, just downtown LA. He has a bunch of people over. He does concert during the commercial breaks. And this year, what he did is he had Taron Egerton, who is playing him in Rocket Man. Taron did a song from Elton John's discography. He did Tiny Dancer in front of the crowd. So Elton John on the piano, Taron Egerton singing, which basically confirms that Taron is going to be singing the role of Elton John.
And he sounds a lot like
He
him.
sounds amazing.
Like, it sounds exactly
Jamie has his hand up.
Yeah, there's actually a video of Elton John being interviewed where he confirms that Taron is going to be doing the singing, and either purposely or accidentally kind of gives a slight to Bohemian Rhapsody. He's like, unlike the Queen movie, Taron's going to be doing his singing for real, not like Rami Malek in that movie.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a that's a slight.
But it's like, the way he says it sounds like he's just saying, not like in this movie, we're doing it this way. It doesn't sound like a
I
bad
think
thing,
that
but...
Rocket Man, not only does it look much better than Bohemian Rhapsody, I think it personally, I'm very compelled by the trailers of it, but I think that Rami Malek winning this year positions Taron Egerton in a place where I think that he could win next year.
I think it's Egerton, but I don't know shit about
Egerton,
it.
I also think it's
Egerton.
Egerton.
We'll say it's one of those two. Let's go Egerton
Let's
now.
just call him Eggsy.
Eggsy.
Hey.
But yeah, I think that Eggsy really has a shot next year, and I think that's like my first prospect of the year has got to be.
I'm happy to hear that. I love him.
Yeah, I think he's great, and I think that Rocket Man looks really good because it mixes that that cheesy biopic formula that we talked about before with Bohemian Rhapsody. It mixes that in with some surrealism.
I don't want to be a pessimist.
Oh,
but,
here we go.
But it's possible that the surreal elements in the trailer is going to be pretty much everything that there is as far as that is in the film. And I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case. I hope that you're right. I hope that there's more of that stuff because that would make the film more interesting. And also the fact that the film is coming out in May and not November is also not necessarily in favor of the film.
Now that is true, but I'm going to tell you to go back and look at the trailer for Bohemian Rhapsody, where the whole selling point of the trailer is the beat of We Will Rock You. Like that whole beat, and then they're singing Bohemian Rhapsody, or is it like they're singing something else over top of that beat? And it just shows that the whole selling point for Bohemian Rhapsody was the music, whereas they're really, really marketing that Rocket Man is not the story of Elton John, it's the like fantasy of Elton John. Plus, I think that something that makes me optimistic is that Elton John is notoriously the most honest person in show business.
Very candid.
Very candid. He just says what's on his mind, and he's not afraid to paint himself as a bad guy. And so I really don't think that he's going to shy away from anything, especially because he's producing the movie. Freddie Mercury had no say on his own portrayal.
Do we know that for sure? Are we sure that they didn't use a Ouija board and contact
That is
the man
true.
himself?
They might have Ouija boarded it, and he said, no Sacha Baron Cohen. But with this one, since Elton John has such, a hand in it, normally that would be a bad thing, I think, for a biopic, to have the main figure be, so in the action. But I think with this, it shows me that this movie's worth having faith in.
And I think it shows in the trailer, too, as they're not shying away from all his problems with drug abuse and things. It's not painting him in sort of like the iconic light the way that the trailers of Bohemian Rhapsody painted Queen. They're already saying like, look, this is a story about a man, not like a legend.
Yeah, and obviously this movie's going to come out, since it's coming out in May and our draft is in August, we're going to have a lot of time to reflect on the movie and see with the critic reviews, with how it does with audience, that'll really position it whether or not this is going to be an Oscar contender. But right now, before it has come out, I think that Rocket Man is the first big Oscar contender of the year. And Tay, do you want to talk about another movie that had a trailer debut at the Oscars?
Oh, yes, I do. So The Irishman had a little teaser trailer, and it's not much of a trailer. It doesn't show any footage, but you hear like a few lines from the movie, and it comes up with the names. Matt had a funny, was it your friend who sent a text or something, or just something you saw on Reddit, where this dude's like, my parents freaked out because it was the Avengers of the 70s.
Yeah, they said like this cast is like the Avengers for old people.
Yeah. That's like, I mean, I have first picks, so I have a nice little list on Letterboxd about movies I will use.
I think we already know that your first pick, since you are
Yeah.
first pick, is The Irishman.
Oh yeah, it's probably gonna
You
be.
wanna read the title of that list for everyone there?
Yeah, it's called Films I'm Gonna Use to Destroy My Filmball Enemies 2019.
Yeah, so
Again, all of our Letterboxd links are in the description.
Plug, plug, plug.
But if you click on mine, you might end up clicking on a virus that will download itself on your computer. There's a 40-70 chance, and that is not a correct ratio.
Anyways, yeah, so that's gonna be high up on my list of picks. I'm just gonna read off some like notable ones for you guys to hear. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I'm waiting for the trailer for that one.
I'm waiting. The shots from on set, like the set photos, look amazing. West Side Story still hasn't had a date released, but is supposed
I think
to
it's
come out.
2020
No, I think it's supposed
because
to
they're
come out
shooting
year.
this summer.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And it
That's
says 2020
disappointing.
right there.
Yeah, it says 2020.
Don't
let's
Irishman
move
yourself
on.
again, which if for those of you who don't know, so Tay picked The Irishman in last year's Filmball as one of his, miraculously still won, even though he picked The Irishman, because there was no release date for that last year, and it seemed like they could have released it last
Yeah,
year.
because they've been working on it for like
Since, like,
3
2017.
Yeah, like for
Yeah.
like 3-ish years.
2016,
2 years,
2017?
3 years, yeah.
But if
Yeah.
it's the year of, and they haven't released the release date, you don't think that was a bit suspicious? Like it was in August.
It's a Netflix movie, and they released Cloverfield Paradox after having the trailer debut at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that is
on the same
That is a
night.
garbage fire film. It's not a Martin Scorsese project.
It's a J.J. Abrams project.
So, like, speaking of prospects for the Irishman, they've, I think there's an article that came out not too long ago that said that Martin Scorsese is really pushing for a wide theatrical release,
Yeah,
not
and
just a
that was
limited.
confirmed. They're doing
Yeah,
a wide
in
theatrical
the
release.
teaser said it's going to be released in theaters and on Netflix.
Yeah,
No, but like
it's-
not just in limited theaters like Roma.
Yeah, no, they're going to be.
No, it's
gonna
releasing
be a
it
wide
everywhere.
release.
Scorsese
yeah.
movie. Of course they're going. They can do it
They
easily.
They can see the money in that, especially since Wolf of Wall Street was like hit. I think it was his highest grossing movie
Yeah.
to date.
Well, his previous film was Silence.
Okay.
Fair. You know what? That's
You
fair.
know what? I can't fight that. It happened. I do like that. Silence is good though.
So I think that the interesting thing about them releasing that teaser during the Oscars is like this has definitely been Netflix's most successful year at the Oscars. I mean, they won 4 Oscars as we talked about, and they were the front runner to win Best Picture. But I think that them debuting that trailer during the Oscars, if nothing else, showed that they were saying, look how much we've done this year. Look at like how good our movies have been this year, and this movie is going to be here next year. So I think that, if anything else, shows that The Irishman is.
It's the
prospect.
equivalent of the Black Panther montages last year.
I saw a trailer for Alita Battle Angel during the Oscars. Does that mean that they're going to do a for your consideration for Best
Maybe
Picture?
For VFX.
I will say I think that Alita has a solid chance at winning Best VFX.
And winning Best Original
Best supporting
Screenplay.
actor for Mahershala Ali. His third one. It's coming.
his third one for playing Vector in Alita Battle Angel.
He's going up against Christoph Waltz, his co-star. All right, so we talked about our prospects for the 2019 year. Let's talk about our favorites of 2018. Arne, you want to start?
Yeah, my favorite is Roma. What about you, John?
I guess I have to go with Roma. Matt?
You know, I this is a tough call, but I'm gonna have to say Roma.
Sorry, I gotta check with my list. One sec. The internet's kind of slow. I'm just loading my. Okay, yeah, Roma was my favorite.
I'm gonna say not Roma, but definitely like in the top
Boo.
10, maybe even the top 5.
Do you even like movies?
I really
You
enjoy.
gave it a 4 out
the
of
film
5. Get
Roma.
out of
4
here.
out of 5.
Yeah.
Give it a 4 out of 10.
hate
Well, that's
cinema?
not true. Yeah, well, I do hate
Gave
cinema.
it a 4%.
Movies, I think, overrated. My favorite movie of the year actually wasn't a movie at all. It was a video of a dog, and it was chasing after a car, and it thought it was its owner.
I think that's
It's a
the only
car,
acceptable.
you idiot dog.
I think that you've found a masterpiece, and you need to show that to us because I can't say that I've seen that, but you know that might edge Roma out.
Yeah, I mean, before we really get into the nitty-gritty of the best and the most noteworthy of 2018, I do want to ask the question, what do we consider a film of 2018, a film of any given year? I'm asking this because we all have films that can be considered something else on our best of the year list. For instance, anything that came out in a festival in 2018 is what I have on my best of 2018 list. But I know that Matt, for instance, has basically whichever film has a wide release in America, but then Never Look Away came out.
Yeah, but
So-
I do it on Oscar eligibility.
Yeah,
so
I do mine on the same
I do mine
thing.
on Oscar eligibility. So Never Look Away, though it got a theatrical release in like February, March, right? February, because it's still February right now. It premiered in New York. It did New York, LA in November so that it would be eligible for the Oscars. So for me, I do mine entirely based on that. And festival releases, I don't consider as the year that they debuted because no one has seen them outside of a lucky few.
Here's what I think is that I do agree with your point. However, I know that, for instance, you have the film Keep an Eye Out, which is a French film, and I know that Oscars don't even look at that. They don't even consider that or anything. But that got a wide release in France, and it's not getting any release anywhere else, trust me.
Yeah,
So in that case, if it gets a wide release in its own country, in its home country, and it's not getting a release anywhere else, isn't that a 2018 film?
Can we just say that Arno put this category into our podcast just so that he could ask me this question? No, so the reason why I would consider something like Keep an Eye Out, which Keep an Eye Out is a very, very funny movie. And I watched it on Mubi, which is a really great streaming website. But the thing is, it hasn't been released in the U.S. or Canada. It hasn't been released in North America. It's been released in France, yes. But technically, its United States and Canada release is on Mubi. And so since it was released on Mubi in this year, as that's like kind of its wide release here, it would be the same thing as like Netflix releasing it as like, this is a Netflix movie, right? Okay. So that's the reason why I would say it's this year, because it did just come out.
Okay, but Never Look Away, again, is a film that came out in the U.S. and Canada in 2019, but got its
Oscar
wide release.
eligibility, though.
Yeah, but like
Oscar
Keep an Eye Out
eligibility.
could have had Oscar eligibility as well. Like, what I don't
But
see why.
but that's the thing, is that it didn't, because it didn't play in New
But
York
it's
and LA.
never really going to have a release. Like, Mubi is not much of a release. It's a streaming service. That's like if you
And it
say, oh, it
disappears
came
after
out on
30
DVD.
days.
Like, that's not really a release, you know?
But it is if it's a straight-to-DVD film.
But movies only last 30 days. After 30 days, it's gone.
Yes.
So that can't be. It's not a release. The movie's not available to watch anywhere after those 30 days.
But still, like, does that change the fact that this is the first time that audiences over here will be able to see it, and that it's...
But why does it have to be audiences only in North America? To me, it feels like when a movie has wide release or gets released on like digital or DVD in its country of origin,
in its own country, yeah.
that means that's its official release date, and not when it gets released at a festival. I hate when people put it in like their best of 2018 list because they saw it at TIFF 2018 and then the movie didn't come out until like 2020. Like, that's ridiculous. But if a movie is released in theaters in its country of origin as a wide release, that's its release date to me.
That's fair enough. See,
Or
that's
not
like
to me.
that's the
That's a
differences
question.
between like, and it's really interesting that you are talking about this question, because like
I'm just challenging
I've
you a
got
little
my
bit.
I've got
You
my
guys
own way
reminded
of
me I
doing
need to put
things.
Gloria Bell on my 2019 list, so thank you for that. Anyways, yeah, so all of our favorite movies was Roma. Oh, sorry, Jamie, I didn't notice you sitting beside me.
Well, that's kind of stupid because I'm right here and you were staring at me while you said that entire sentence, Tay.
Can you explain to us what your favorite movie was?
I don't really have a solid favorite. I have a few that I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed Sorry to Bother You and Black Klansman and Mid-90s I also really liked, and The Favorite and Roma. I really did enjoy Roma, but
Not enough.
Perhaps, but I can't really put my finger on one specifically besides I guess that video of that dog that was just chasing that. It really, guys, you should have seen this dog, man. It really thought that car was a person. It was barking. It was like, hey, where's my food, car? I love it. It warms the tender heart.
I want to talk about release just with Paddington 2.
Oh my God, we're still on this.
I'm just gonna say to challenge your point, which is so Paddington 2 came out
Challenge me.
late.
I don't care.
Paddington 2 came out late December in the UK of
Its home
2017.
country.
Yeah, its home country, and then it was released in like late January of 2018.
Yes, I remember.
Here. So does that mean, is it a 2017 movie or a 2018?
It's a 2017. movie.
2017.
It came out
I
in
say
its country of
2018.
origin. in 2017.
Only 2017.
Matt,
It's
Canada.
2018.
Matt,
Paddington
Matt,
two
I'm
guys
sorry,
here.
but like
Matt's
I
an
know we're all
idiot.
Canadian, but Canada is not the most important country in the world.
But at the
This
same
guy is
I'm not saying Canada is. I'm saying
I'm
the
just
U.S. is.
Oh, so you're
Cut
saying
that out.
Yeah, I hate the British because they got Paddington 2 first.
okay. Yeah, strike that from the record.
You know, I'm legally not allowed to watch Paddington 2 for 3 more years because that's how long it took me to watch the first one.
I don't think that's true.
You don't think it's true? You don't think I won't watch it for 3 years? You just wait and see.
Well, I haven't seen any of them. So, ha.
I'm legally not allowed to see Paddington 2 because I don't have a soul.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's depressing.
Everyone let him sit with that.
I'm sad about that. Also, Mission Impossible Followed is in Tay's top 10 of 2018. That's too high.
It is also in my top 10, I will say.
That's too high.
I think while we're talking about best of the year, let's talk categorically because I think that Mission Impossible is the best action movie of the
Let's
last
talk
year.
allegorically. I think that Mission Impossible is a comment on society's love for capitalism.
Yeah, and I love
That's-
capitalism.
That's an interesting point you got there. You're going to have to expand on that.
No. Okay. Getting back to Mission Impossible Fallout, I don't think it was the best action movie of 2018, or maybe it was. I don't know. I didn't see a lot of action movies that I can think of. What did I just say, Tay? To me, it just felt like a retread of like the past 4 Mission Impossible movies. It just took all the best elements and shoved them together, which is
And
smart.
isn't that a recipe for the best action movie of
Isn't
the
that a
year?
recipe for a movie that I know exactly what's going to happen because I've seen it 4 times before? Except this time Henry Cavill has a mustache.
If they took the best elements from those movies and they put them together, aren't they just taking out the bad stuff from the other ones and, finding the best possible Mission
Yeah,
Impossible
but they're
movie?
they're taking elements that worked, like not even elements, literally plot devices that worked in other Mission Impossible movies and just doing them again.
What
So
they're doing,
it's not good the second time around because you already saw it. It already happened.
what they're doing with their movies is exactly what Quentin Tarantino does with every movie he's ever watched in his entire life.
You could also say the same thing with like Wes Anderson. That Wes Anderson's movies get progressively more Wes Anderson-y.
Yes.
And he's just using elements that he's done in the past movies.
But
But does
they-
that make them bad movies?
I think it makes them worse because the more he does that, the less they're focusing on the actual story and the actual heart of the movie, and the more kind of just visually appealing they are, but also the more kind of empty they feel.
I would love if either of you could offer a counter movie for best action movie of the year.
I
Pacific Rim.
Does Spider-Verse
Uprising.
count as an action movie?
John,
that was
actually,
last
please talk
year.
about that. I want to know what you think about that.
Okay, let me just bring you to a world.
Sorry, hold on. Did that movie come out this year?
yeah,
No.
yes, it did.
Did
It
it
came out
really?
in
Yes.
March last year.
I'm dying.
Let me bring you to a world where a interdimensional rift has opened up in the middle of the ocean.
I'd tell you I want to go home.
Well, what if you couldn't?
Because you already bought your tickets like a big loser you are.
And you had to build giant robots to fight the dinosaur monsters that were coming out of the rift.
Get this, on Mount Fuji.
So I thought are we talking about Spy
And
Kids 3
what if
still?
I told you Clint Eastwood's son isn't the best part?
I would
He's
believe
the
you.
worst.
He's the worst.
He's never been the best part of any movie he has ever
It
been
wasn't even
in.
the best part of what Clint Eastwood brought into this world.
That would be the good, the bad, and the ugly.
No, it's actually like it's that movie's literally like someone went up to John Boyega and was like, "Hey,
It wasn't even
sorry.
it wasn't even the best thing that was
John Fromage?
yes."
it wasn't even the best thing that was related to Clint Eastwood to come out this year. That was The Mule.
And you hated the mule.
Yes.
God, I can't even keep talking about Pacific Rim.
Okay, I want to bring up one of my favorite movies of the year, which tragically, was not really in contention for any awards, which is a horror movie, and it's Mandy. I'm not a big horror guy. I know Jamie is a huge horror fan.
And ironically, I have yet to see Mandy.
Yeah, but I think that Mandy really stood out to me. Mandy, I would say actually is barely a horror movie. It's not scary in any way, but it's a very tonal film, and it's almost poetic horror in a way. That this is a movie where we get like long gazing shots of like Nicolas Cage and I can't remember the actress who is it Andrea Riseborough
That's
who
right,
plays Mandy, his wife. But you get these long shots looking at them, and it builds a tone, and that tone is immediately subverted by these fantasy elements and the more like metal elements of this movie. It's really really amazing. In any movie, I think that Nick Cage delivers both a subtle performance and one of the most outrageously over-top performances of the year is worth shouting out. There's one scene where Nick Cage is in a bathroom and he's just freaking out. And it's one of my favorite scenes of the year. And I think, Arno, it's one of your favorite scenes too, despite you not enjoying the movie as much as I did.
It's by far the highlight of the film. Seeing Nicolas Cage pour alcohol on his wounds while trying not to yell too much. Is
and yelling
prime,
anyways.
And yelling anyways,
He yells a
the way Nicolas Cage would, while being in this super claustrophobic bathroom in this one take where it never cuts away. It's just, here is your Nicolas Cage you want. And you're going to get it for a good minute. I'd say it's about a minute long. And it's the highlight of the film. It's terrific. Maybe a few scenes earlier is where the film really starts to be incredible, because I would argue the first half is just kind of boring. And maybe I won't think that way on a second watch, but I was just not really involved in the cinematography and the quote unquote poetry.
Yeah,
of the film.
I was spellbound by the film from the very start. But this is a movie that I think has everything. Like it feels to me, if I were to describe it, it feels almost like Mad Max in a way. Just with the design, there's monsters, there's mutants, there's cults, there's Nicolas Cage like using a chainsaw to have a
that's
sword
my favorite
fight.
part of Mad Max.
Nicolas Cage with a chainsaw fight. But it
in a chainsaw fight where one of the two chainsaws are 4 times longer than the other.
Is it better than when Dennis Hopper fought Leatherface with chainsaws in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2? I don't think so.
I think you're going to have to watch, Mandy, and let me know what you think.
I think you're going to have to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 starring Dennis Hopper.
The first Texas Chainsaw Massacre made me feel sick, and I was eating during it, and that was the worst choice I ever could have made.
Jamie,
I was eating mac and cheese, and it was I had to stop eating.
Jamie,
brain
best
food.
Yeah,
Dennis
it's
Hopper
horror movie.
performance: Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 or Blue Velvet?
Well, it's obviously Blue Velvet actually, but it's hilarious that he's in Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 because it's a horrible movie.
By the way, shout out to Blue Velvet getting a Criterion release.
Shout out to Blue Velvet just in general, and shout out to Kyle MacLachlan for being the best human being in existence.
Now, Jamie, since I talked about a horror movie, I'd love to hear what your favorite horror movie of the year is, because you are huge into horror.
I am a big horror guy, and 2018 was a fun year for horror, and I think the best horror movie is undoubtedly Hereditary. It's one of the best movies of 2018 in my opinion. It was fantastic and just so upsetting in the best way possible. It's just so much fucked up shit that happens in that movie.
I have a question for you. What if her head just did that?
I would be amused either way. Yeah, that movie is insane. But also Halloween, the new 2018 reboot of Halloween was absolutely delightful. It's certainly not nearly as good of a movie as Hereditary, but just I love Halloween and I love Michael Myers. To see the original Michael Myers back on the big screen with Jamie Lee Curtis and everything, it was awesome. Also, Suspiria, not that good. And
No,
Here's
here's
where
what I
Tay comes in.
I have a favorite horror movie of the year, which is none of those that were aforementioned, except for, yes, the remake of Suspiria. I loved
Suspiria
it.
is incredible.
It's my third favorite movie of the year, just behind Roma and The Favorite.
has anyone here seen the original Suspiria besides me?
I have,
No.
yes.
It's a wonderful, silly film, and I don't know who would ever look at the original Suspiria, which is like a
I'm not
dark,
going into Suspiria trying to compare it.
a dark comedy, bizarre, just absolute joy of a ride, and be like, hey, I'm gonna make a 3-hour think piece with a lot of elements of darkness. It's not the same type of movie at all.
That's exactly what I want, though.
But I would counter that by saying that while I didn't love either of them, I think that I like the new Suspiria a bit more, because I think that while the original Suspiria has a lot of really great elements, I think that there's some, beautiful set design, a lot of great colors in there. It's just like
I also think the new Suspiria got overlooked for editing, because I thought its editing was
I
fantastic.
think it got
It's
overlooked
part
for
of
makeup.
Really?
Yeah, it's part of what pulled me in.
I do actually like the editing of it. I like a lot about the Suspiria. I gave it like 3.5 out of 5.
I can see why people don't like it, though. There's
I-
things that just don't fit.
I love the new Suspiria, but I thought one of the weakest parts was actually the editing. I thought it would cut too fast for no reason sometimes. I was like, hold on
I
to
didn't
your
find
shots.
it for no reason, not with how they use sound. I thought it just worked.
Yeah.
It was just kind of haunting, and I liked it a lot.
Fair.
Now I want to talk a little bit about animation because I think that there's a resounding Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was a real surprise, and it was really a great.
One of my
animated
favorite
film.
movies also of the year. Probably in the top 10.
Yeah.
You have Matt, is that your favorite animated film? Because I know that you really
Yeah.
enjoyed La Casa Lobo.
Yeah. Okay. So I actually have.
Mirai.
Looking at my list right now, I think I have like a ridiculous amount of animation on here. So I'd say my favorite animated movies of the year, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is an excellent, excellent animated movie. Really great script with the help of Lord and Miller on that one.
And very inventive in how it animated.
Very inventive in how it's animated.
And a wonderful cast.
I also
The
love.
script was a little cliched at times.
I think
but
you're a little cliche,
I think that the only thing I'd agree with you on that is Spider-Ham. I don't like Spider-Ham.
No. All right, I love John
like
Mulaney,
the
so
scene?
Spider-Ham
Yeah,
was a
get out of here,
delight.
bro.
Me
you
too.
like the scene where the father just comes in and thinks that Spider-Man is to be blamed for this, and then it never gets brought up again?
But isn't that a thing that's carried through all of
Yeah,
Spider-Man?
this is just Spider-Man.
like-
That's how Spider-Man
That's how Spider-Man works. You got like J. Jonah
That's
Jameson.
not an excuse.
It is, though, because this is a movie for children.
Well, I don't want to see films
you know,
for children.
Mission Impossible. That's usually just how it works.
But other animated films I really like
Oh
this
my
year.
God.
Isle of Dogs, Wes Anderson is a really
Wonderful film.
good one. It's
And
a wonderful film.
That's
visually
probably my
favorite.
amazing.
I mentioned as my striking recommendation last week Mirai, which I think is really special. I even really loved The Incredibles 2, which I know not everyone loved, but I thought it was really good and a great addition to the first one, which is one of my favorite films. As well as there's a little film called The Wolf House, and The Wolf House is a movie that I watched on Mubi, which is again that 30-day streaming service where films disappear. And The Wolf House is it's an animated film where they painted the walls of a house, and the animation is all taking place as this camera floats through a house, and things are popping up on the walls and telling a story as paint moves across the walls. It's really amazing, and I would recommend anyone checking that out because I think that's the most like creative animation that I've seen in a very long time.
There was a lot of success in foreign language cinema this year. The films that were nominated for Best Foreign Language Film at the Oscars were all relatively successful at the box office, so this was a pretty good year for foreign films. What do we feel about the best, other than Roma, because we've talked about that enough. Other than that, what are some of the best foreign films that we've watched this year?
I literally only saw Roma that I can think of.
Okay, then I guess I'll talk about Lazzaro Felice, also known as Happy as Lazaro, and I'm mentioning it partly because it's on Netflix right now, so you can go watch it immediately, and also because it is a film that deeply affected me. It's a film that is narratively unpredictable. It's something that goes into directions that you don't expect, that genuinely surprised me. And it's just a beautiful film. It's a film I would recommend to anyone. I thought it was something that was very enchanting, thought-provoking, and just engaging.
Jamie has his hand up.
I actually thought of a foreign language film that I saw in 2018 that was delightful. I saw a dubbed in French version of Bumblebee. Wonderful film. The French voice cast was magnifique. Is that French?
Yeah, going off that, one that I really liked this year was Shoplifters, which was a Japanese film and also nominated for an Oscar.
I won't mention mine because when we come to the end of the episode, I will be mentioning mine as a striking recommendation.
Ooh.
Can we talk about Climax, or are we just saying that's next year?
I haven't seen it yet, so
Yeah, let's
can't
let's
talk
wait till
about
all of us seen it because it's a film we should probably discuss once most of us have seen it.
I love Sofia Boutella. I think she's very talented.
She's not really a lead in the film. Like it's a lot of characters are leads, if that makes sense.
I think she's very talented, Arno. I didn't say
Jamie,
she
we
was
don't
the
care.
lead.
She's not the lead of the film.
She's also not the lead of The Mummy, but she's fantastic in that, which I also haven't seen. She's cool though. She's cool. She's really good. She's really good gymnast sort
Is
of
that
thing.
the same mummy that ruined an entire universe?
I think our universe is doing just fine, John. I think it's the entirety of humanity that's ruining the universe.
All right, let's move on to. I just want to do a quick segment where we talk about some of the worst things we've seen this year, just as to have a little bit of fun. However, we do have to mention at least one little positive aspect to the film. Jamie has his hand up, so I guess he can speak now.
So the worst movie of 2018 for me was The Week of, starring Adam Sandler and Chris Rock. It was a Netflix original film. It was the fourth Adam Sandler Netflix original film from in the past, I don't know, 5 years or so, and I hate it so much. It doesn't even it's not even a movie. They just like slapped a bunch of random unfunny bits together, and it looks horrible. There's the cinematography, the lighting, just everything is so amateur, and it's coming from a director who's made many watchable Adam Sandler movies in the past. It's the worst thing ever. One good thing about it was better than Sandy Wexler, the Adam Sandler movie that came out last year, which was the fucking worst movie ever, which made me honestly become a nihilist for about 24 hours because it was soul-crushingly bad. This wasn't. It was just unwatchable.
I haven't seen the week of. But my worst, the most disappointing movie of the year for me was Stan and Ollie. Let me just walk you through what happened to me when I got to the theater. So I sit down, and usually I don't try actively watch bad movies. If it's something I'm not going to enjoy, I either walk out or I turn it off. But a nice old lady decided to sit beside me, and I was blocked between two people, and this nice, sweet lady who put her purse down on the floor, and she got all of her food out, and I couldn't just get up and leave in the middle of it. It would have been terrible. So I stayed for the entire duration of Stan and Ollie. That's just my experience leading up to it. But honestly, there's only very few things I found enjoyable with it. I thought the acting was good for the most part. I thought like the characters themselves seem to be written. That's the thing I don't like is the script is just bland. Like the story is not that interesting to me, and maybe that's just like the mood I was in when I went to the theater. But the characters just seemed very bland and kind of archetypal, stereotypical. And I did like John C. Reilly a lot, though. I think anytime John C. Reilly gets on screen, he gets to do something that isn't a straight comedic performance, which is funny because it's Stan and Ollie, which wasn't a funny movie, but it was really trying to be. That's the other thing, too. For a movie that was about comedians, like, silent film comedians who it just wasn't funny. I think I laughed maybe one time, and I think it just missed the mark on everything, and I was hoping it would be better.
I guess I'll go next. I went to see the film Life Itself. Do you guys know about Life Itself?
Yeah, your first mistake is that you went to see it.
No. I did not go into the theater knowing I was seeing it. I went into the theater knowing I was going to see a movie within the TIFF selection 6 days early before the festival starts. So I was like, hell yeah, I want to see a film, a premiere of a film before its premiere. That would be awesome. Turns out it was Life Itself. Out of all the films they could have given us, they decided to give us Life Itself.
I'm very sorry.
I was trying to be positive. I was trying to be optimistic, but turns out the film is exactly as bad as you would imagine it to be. It really is just the worst version, the discount episodes of This Is Us. It really is that. It's a film that just basically tortures its characters. It's literally just there to give its characters cancer, to throw its characters in front of buses, and have that character go into labor as she's dying, things like that. Like it's really cruel to its characters. It's literally just there for the sake of drama, for the sake of melodrama. It's a film that, at the end of the day, what the film amounts to is that two people met each other because one of them saw the other person's mother die in a bus accident.
I love meet cute stories.
That is what the film is summed up to.
I just want to point out too, I searched it up while you're talking about it because I just forgot what it was. Looked at the poster, and I always thought Tom Hanks was in this movie. It turns out that's Antonio Banderas, so I already don't like this movie just for misleading me that far.
I always get those two mixed up. I'm like, what was that? What was that movie with Tom Hanks? Was it called Desperado?
Was that Spy Kids 3?
Was it the one with the hologram?
I don't get that one.
So all in all, it's a despicable film. I hope it dies in a fire, and clearly it's done nothing good at the box office. So at least there's that. If I do have to mention something positive, is that it was competently shot, and there was a montage somewhere in the middle of the film that was semi-interesting, and that the music was a little bit different and the cutting was a little bit interesting. But really, it's just a film that the only reason I'm mentioning it is that the plot points that I won't get too much into are so ridiculous that they're actually a little bit fun to talk about. I remember the night after I had seen it, I went to John's house and I was telling him, yo, you have no idea what I just saw. Let me talk to you about this. So that is kind of positive, but again, a despicable film. Never see this.
Well, also, Arno, right before we were getting A&W, and he was like, man, I really hope it's not life itself. And then he left.
Famous last words from Arno.
What about you, John or Matt?
John or Matt, that's your name.
I could go. Sierra Burgess is a loser. Yo, fuck this movie. Okay, first off, every review makes the same joke, is Sierra Burgess is an asshole. Because she is. In one point in the movie, she pretends to be deaf so that she doesn't have to talk to a boy. And then the boy, who's played by Noah Centario? No one knows how to say that? I don't know. This Noah kid, he's great. I love him. Great actor.
No.
High school sweetheart type.
Wrong.
He goes, oh, it's okay. My little brother is deaf. So then she has to fake being deaf, and she ends up saying, like, I just ate poop or something like that, like something whack like that, which is the dumbest thing. And, like, the whole movie, she's just, like, a dick to everybody, but then she's like, why is everyone so mean to me?
Also,
and it's just, like, the dumbest
Because
thing.
she's a loser.
there's a part where the Noah dude, is on a date with another girl, because what Sierra is doing is she's basically catfishing him. She's been texting the Noah guy pretending to be another girl. And so then when she goes on a date with him, she has to send this other girl to go on a date with him. And then when the guy wants to kiss her, she makes him close her eyes so Sierra Burgess can literally roll out from under the car that they're standing beside, stand up, kiss this man that he does not know she's kissing him. He thinks it's another lady, and then roll under the car again like a psychopath, and then have the other girl come back. She's actually, like, she is insane, and she is cruel, and she's a loser.
Positive thing about the movie?
The title?
It was really fun to watch, John. You can't deny.
It was really fun. Well, if you sit with three friends and are able to make fun of the whole thing, it's great. Oh, one positive thing. It's the same, her friend's the same guy from Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl. He's Earl.
Yes.
And Earl,
He's RJ Seiler.
yeah, he's the best part about the entire
he's
movie.
objectively, like, fun in the
Yeah.
movie. Like, he's
Has the
he's
best
funny.
fits, drips everywhere because his outfits are so fly. Like, just the coolest guy.
A janitor follows him everywhere he goes with a mop.
Yeah.
'Cause he's dripping all over the
Dripping all
place.
over the place. Great.
But
Best part of that
his
movie.
character actually does have some funny lines and stuff. Like, he makes it work.
Yeah.
Your turn, Matt.
I'm not one to, like, I never seek out movies that I think are bad, so I can't say what the worst movie of the year is because I haven't watched it. Like, I'm going to be real, I don't know why. I can see why Tay saw Stan and Ollie. I can see why you saw Life Itself because it was forced onto you.
What are you about to say to me right now, Matt?
I have no clue why you watched The Week Of or why you watched Sierra Burgess is a Loser. Those are just things I avoided because there's 24 hours in a day, guys.
Clearly, you're letting other people form opinions for you, Matt. Maybe The Week Of is the most hilarious comedy of the year.
Yeah, but, like, is it? Is it, though?
Not this time, but next time, maybe.
Jamie,
Same
with
with
all due
Wexler,
respect,
too.
there are so many films coming out in 1 year. There's no way you would put The Week Of as your top priority.
You're right, but when it comes up on Netflix and I'm laying in bed, I'm like, oh, new Adam Sandler. Let me see if he's back. He hasn't been back for a while.
Well, like, also, I wanted to watch Sierra Burgess as a Loser because it was a follow-up to All the Boys I Loved Before. Is that the right title?
It is?
Like, it's not actually like a sequel, but it's like Netflix's attempt at trying to do another movie like that and failing really hard, which is why I was pumped because I was like, ooh, I really like that movie. I'm going to watch this one now.
Yeah, so I'm just going to talk about what disappointed me, because this is a movie that I went into with very high expectations, and that film is Assassination Nation, a film that I think is just so disgusting on a thematic level that I feel like this is a movie. It is a movie to me that is trying to capitalize off of the Me Too / Time's Up movement, without really having anything new to say, without really being earnest about any of what it's saying. It's a movie that is written and directed by a white dude that is basically the sole message of the movie that I saw. At least I know that Arno does like the movie. To me, it just felt as though it was the director constantly going, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I was miserable while watching this movie because it just felt so ingenuine. And oh my God, it's just painful to watch, and it just goes so over the top with the violence. If it were to be made, I think it should have been made by the people that it's trying to represent, instead of being made by someone who's trying to show that he's not such a bad guy.
And you're one positive?
It's beautifully shot. There's some camera movements that are absolutely amazing. On a technical level, this movie is pretty stunning. It's got like great photography, very good editing. The music's even pretty solid. Costume design's great. Really, like I have to shout out pretty much everyone who's on the team of this movie, because there's nothing that's really bad about it aside from just the whole experience of sitting down and absorbing this.
All right, nice. So we'll move on to our striking recommendations. Does anybody want to start? Just a reminder, the striking recommendations is anything that we saw, heard, witnessed in the past few weeks that really struck us. So it can be anything beyond just a movie. It can be a TV show, it can be a play, it can be a book, it can be music, it can be anything. So who would like to start?
I'll start. My striking recommendation is a film that I saw right before the Oscars. It was the last movie of all 52 nominated movies that I had to see. So the last film that I saw for the Oscars was Never Look Away, which is it's a German film, and it is brilliant, I think. This is the story of an artist in Germany and him trying to find out who he is as an artist. Now, this is an amazing film. I know Arno also saw it this week.
Yeah, I mean, a film that I also want to say was nominated for Best Cinematography, which was kind of a shocker.
It was a shock, yeah. That was a shock.
Looking into it, I realized that cinematography was made by an American cinematographer called Caleb Deschanel, I believe his name is, and he's actually been nominated.
Any relation to Zoe?
I don't know. I should look that up.
Emily from Bones.
Yeah, well, essentially, he is an American cinematographer, and he's actually been nominated 5 times prior to this film. His last nomination was in 2004 for The Passion of the Christ, just to give you an idea. He's also done films like The Right Stuff. He's actually the DP on the new Lion King film.
Can I just say that I just looked up Caleb Deschanel, and he is Emily and Zoe's father.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Okay, so there you go. That's probably why he was nominated.
Yeah, but
Probably why his last name's Deschanel.
I think that Never Look Away is a movie that everyone should see. It has so much to say about art and about being a person and about choosing between. I think the movie is about how all these things happen to us over the course of our lives, and sometimes it can be really terrible, and you can make the decision to let those things impact you as a person and help you grow, or you can choose to look away. And the film tells us to, never look away from tragedy.
Or it tells us work without author, which is the original German title.
Yes, yeah.
That doesn't work with your with your speech.
My thing there,
Yeah.
but
like
Ruin everything, Arno.
And despite the film's flaws, anybody who calls himself an artist or a filmmaker, I believe, should check out this film if they can. Don't look at the runtime because it goes by like crazy. It's a little over 3 hours long, but it goes by. It feels like a little under 2 hours. In my opinion, and it goes by so fast, and the way that the film all amounts to basically the early life of an artist, and to see what his work means in the context of his life is absolutely astonishing.
Not a 2018 movie, but I'm just gonna plug him because I love him. Matt Johnson, who directed The Dirties, not a lot of people know him.
I love The Dirties.
A Canadian filmmaker, born in Toronto, I believe. Yeah, Toronto born. Operation Avalanche is this great movie he made about, it's like a mockumentary almost, about faking the moon landing and how...
It's like the anti-First Man.
Anti-First Man, it's true. It's about some CIA agents who want to go into NASA to learn about the plans for the moon landing, but they discover that NASA has no plan or can't figure out a plan to land on the moon, so they're not going to land on the moon. So basically, they take it upon themselves to figure out how to fake the moon landing. And if you're into like budget movies or like making your own films, it's a really good movie to learn from because they do it with no budget and it's like a period piece, yet like they do it the most minimalistic way and it still works super well. One of the really cool scenes they do in the movie, which the characters in the movie at one point want to gain information about space by sneaking onto 2001 A Space Odyssey set, like with Stanley Kubrick. There's no behind the scenes footage of any of that movie. So they actually took stills from the movie and then reanimated them. So Stanley Kubrick, there's like a famous picture of him standing on set. They actually reanimated his face reacting to Matt Johnson being like, "Oh, what you got written over there?" And he just kind of like gives him a weird eye and looks away, which is like the coolest thing. And it's just like a really insane movie.
Fun. I'll have to check that out. Tay.
Yeah, my striking recommendation is an album. So I've been listening to an album called Nuff Rhetoric by Matthias Hayes, Nuff spelled Nuff. He's a Toronto artist, so anyone listening from Toronto, he's, hometown artist. This is his first album. He played a concert earlier this year at the Night Owl, and I think everyone should check it out if you're into rap, R&B. It's pretty great.
And I got a little something for you horror fans out there. I'm talking to you, Jamie, when you're listening to this, when you're at home and in your bed and you got your headphones on.
How lonely are you?
A movie I watched recently that I thought was really interesting is a documentary about the Nightmare on Elm Street series called Never Sleep Again. It's a 4-hour basically oral history of the entire Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and it talks to the directors and writers and crew members behind all the films, as well as almost everyone who starred in each installment. And it's really interesting to listen to these people talk about these movies that started off so small, it became so huge. As a filmmaker, it's very inspiring to see that these shoestring budget movies can grow into multi-million-dollar franchises. It's a really fun and interesting look at behind the scenes, like with the practical effects that they do are absolutely breathtaking, and some of them I didn't even appreciate that much watching the actual movies. But when you're watching this documentary, they're amazing. They're so cool and made for so little money. And so basically, if you're into horror, if you're into like independent filmmaking, if you just like to see how shit gets made, and also there's some very funny stories, then you'll really like this movie. It's 4 hours long, but watching it just makes it feel all that much more of an accomplishment when you finish it, because you're like, yeah, I watched that whole 4-hour movie and I didn't even have to go to the bathroom once. So yeah.
Well, congratulations there, Jamie. I'm going to recommend a French film. Isn't that great? So it's a film you guys probably have never heard about and would never hear of if it wasn't for me. This film was actually out of competition at Cannes Film Festival and came out in France in October. I saw it in Ottawa. I don't know if it's coming out here in Toronto. It might. I don't know. But it's called, the English title is Sink or Swim. The translated title from the French title would be The Big Bath.
I like that way better.
Yeah. I don't know why Sink or Swim has nothing to do with the film, but The Big Bath does. It's basically about a man who is depressed who joins a synchronized male swimming team.
Oh, I've seen a trailer for that. It looked like a lot of fun.
Yeah, the thing is that I was expecting a good, no more, no less French comedy. So something along the lines of The Untouchables, but not as good as The Untouchables because it's hard to top that. And while I don't know if it's as good as The Untouchables as far as story, as far as style, it's something that has a much bigger budget than I anticipated. It's something that's so much more creative than I anticipated. It's not something that's just traditionally shot, reverse shot, whatever. It's a film that starts in a circle aspect ratio with the narration of the main character talking about how life goes into circles and how he's depressed and stuff and like everything circular, planets, whatever. And then it goes to a square and he talks about how how the world seems to be putting him in a box. And then it cuts to this little kid playing with these little toys where you got to put the circle in the circle, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And the kid doesn't realize he got to put the circle in the square and the square in the circle. And the narrator just telling us a circle will never fit in a square and the opposite. And then it goes to the regular aspect ratio and the film starts. That kind of creativity runs throughout the film and is what makes this film stand out so much more than all the other like very average mainstream French comedies that never get out of the country, because the story is interesting, even though it's very much like a heartfelt kind of cheesy story like Green Book, you know what I mean? It's about serious topics but with comedy. It's just a film that's very heartwarming, that's very creatively well done, and that's genuinely funny. despite its serious topics. It's a film where every character has a problem. Their teacher is an alcoholic. The other teacher that replaces her is in a wheelchair. The other characters have their own problems. One of the men's son is having some mental difficulties, having trouble in school, and his mother is very sick. There's all these things. They're all struggling with something, and they're all kind of teaming together to try to be good at their synchronized male swimming team, something that sounds just so ridiculous, but it works for the film. So yeah, that was our episode today, our Oscars recap and best of the year episode.
Our second ever.
Exactly. And our final effort.
Tay.
Was it? Oh, it was. Now I know.
So, big announcement. Next episode, we're going to have a new guest. We're going to have Adam McGoyan on the podcast.
Everybody give it up for Adam McGoyan in 2 weeks.
Adam, you want to say anything?
He walked out as soon as we brought up his name.
But he's
so
coming
shy.
back. He's coming back.
He's coming
next
back, and he
episode.
said he might bring Ryan Reynolds. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Give it up for Ryan Reynolds.
So Ryan Reynolds and Adam McGoyan confirmed for next episode. That is huge, guys. If you're into cinema, try new things, buy a Rolex, and go watch movies. Thanks for joining us. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye.
If Rolex is good enough for James Cameron, sure enough, it's good for you.
If Rolex is the reason that James Cameron broke up with Catherine Bigelow, it's probably good enough for you.
Okay, Arno is gone. The podcast is all about Jake Gyllenhaal now. We're going to be talking about our favorite Jake Gyllenhaal movies from the past 10 years.
Wildlife.
Wildlife.
Brothers.
Brothers came out more...
Bubble
Brothers
Boy.
does not come out in the past 10 years.
City
He
Slickers.
said the past 10
City
years, guys.
City
Slickers.
Slickers.
We're going off the rails here. We're just doing
City Slickers.
any Jake Gyllenhaal movie.
Brokeback Mountain.
My favorite Jake Gyllenhaal movie.
I broke my back on Everest.
My favorite Jake
Brokeback
Gyllenhaal
Mountain.
movie is Brokeback Mountain, which not the Brokeback Mountain. You know, it's the documentary about the time that Tobey Maguire broke his back.
Spider-Man Far From Home.
It's when Tobey Maguire broke his back on the set of Seabiscuit, and he wasn't going to play Spider-Man in Spider-Man 2, and Jake Gyllenhaal had to play. Arno's back.
That is ironic.
Arno's back.
because-
Everybody pretend that you don't know who Jake Gyllenhaal is.
Who?